Guys, good Friday afternoon and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world here on the I Love CVille Network. I'm very excited for today's program. In a matter of 90 seconds or so, we will introduce you to the fabulous Carole Thorpe right here on the I Love CVille Network. This lady has been actively involved with our community for 27 years. One time she was the chairwoman for the Jefferson Area Tea Party, 3 terms, in fact, as chairwoman. She was also the media spokeswoman for the Jefferson Area Tea Party, actively involved in theater in the community, actively involved from a media standpoint on both WCHV and WINA. We will highlight her arrival to the community, her success in raising a special needs son, the fabulous Matthew, here in our community, and undoubtedly we will talk news cycle and topics du jour on today's program. The I Love CVille Show today is presented by Skooma Boutique Dispensary. The best dispensary in Charlottesville is Skooma Boutique Dispensary on the downtown mall next to Rapture. Skooma Boutique Dispensary. We, of course, will give some love to Greenberry's Coffee as well. Proud partner of the I Love CVille Show. If you want an opportunity to win free coffee for a year, you heard me correctly, Greenberry's Coffee Roasters is celebrating 30 years in business, and they're giving you a chance to win free coffee for a year. You can do that by visiting enter.greenberries.com. I'll give you the URL again, enter.greenberries.com. Judah Wickhauer is our fantastic director. Judah, if we can go to the 2-shot and get Carole's mic on, that would be absolutely fantastic. We're going to need that in mic volume, and give me a thumbs up when that's done. We will welcome the fabulous Carole Thorpe to the show. We on the 2 with the mic. We are. Carole, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jerry, and I'm thrilled to be here. I've been so looking forward to this.
Thank you kindly for joining us. Why don't we start with an introduction of who you are for all our viewers and listeners.
Well, I, as you say, arrived in Charlottesville. It'll actually be 27 years in October, but I'm coming up on that soon. I'm a native New Yorker, born in Schenectady, what I've affectionately called the town that time forgot.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, way back in the day, back in vaudeville days, which actually predates me, it was the butt of a lot of jokes. Schenectady, New York, even then was a bit of a throwback. And if you were to visit there today, it hasn't changed very much. It's sort of like a sister-like side city to Albany, New York, which has grown up tremendously, and Schenectady has not. So I prefer to tell people that, we moved to Long Island when I was 6 years old. I consider that sort of my home base, Port Washington, Long Island, which was formerly the home of Publishers Clearinghouse.
Interesting.
Yeah, in fact, my mom was a trailblazer back in the 70s, way back in the 70s when I was a little girl. My mom was one of 50 home typists. This was back in the day when they were starting to get women out of the home, and some women didn't go out of the home. They wanted to stay home and raise their kids. And so on these huge IBM typewriters, every day these trucks would come and they'd bring these big, you'd fill out your cards to get your magazines and that. And so they would mail them in, and then they would drive them to these home typists, and they would type into these IBM computers. All the rage then, they would type in the information for the magazines that you ordered, and so the trucks would come, bring this information to and from the home typists. They could stay at home and work and be home when their kids came home on the bus. Radical stuff back in the day. So this was Port Washington, New York. Now that plant, after 50 some odd years, is now gone. They're going to put like an art museum or something there, yeah.
Well, it's an absolute benefit to have you in Charlottesville. I noticed immediately and years ago of how engaged and active you are within the community. I first started hearing your name as leadership, as the chairwoman of the Tea Party. I heard your name for the first time through a former boss of mine, Joe Thomas.
The great Joe Thomas.
We love you, Joe Thomas. If you're watching the program, we truly do. And then I started following you on social as a result of that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I noticed right away was how you were on top of things that were in the news cycle, often ahead of the news cycle. So items that you were posting or commenting upon on social found their ways as tangible, actual news maybe a day after, or 2 days after, or even a week after you've posted. So why don't we do this? Highlight first the positive, what it is about this Charlottesville and Albemarle County community that you love, and then I'd like to get maybe a State of the Union from Carole Thorpe on this community and local government and where we stand.
Well, as far as getting ahead of the curve, that goes back a long time in my history, but I really honed that with the Tea Party. Because as much as you love CVille, and I am getting to love CVille more and more, I am clearly a political minority in town. As such, I have not always been well received. My views certainly have not always been well received. They've also been misinterpreted to some degree. But when you're a minority, you tend to play defensive a lot. And you also have to think ahead in order to be successful, especially if you're leading a group of people. And so that's where I had to develop a lot of that was, okay, so if I'm going to go out in front of Charlottesville speaking for the Tea Party or planning certain events for the Tea Party, I have to think 2 steps ahead. Not only in terms of perception, which I know is a lot of what you do in your business.
Sure, absolutely.
But also in terms of, okay, there are people out there who are waiting for any misstep, a half a misstep, to create the perception of a misstep, even if a misstep didn't happen. And I'm always having to think ahead of what are those going to be, how will I address them, not only as a leader, but also as media spokesperson. And I make that distinction with media spokesperson. In fact, the year I wasn't Tea Party leader, I was asked to continue to be media spokesperson because I had some of those skills to be able to get in front of a live camera, to anticipate the questions, and while we had some wonderful people step in that year off that I needed, they weren't necessarily, and they recognized it, didn't necessarily have the skills to do that in front of a live TV camera, so they were like, Carole, would you please continue in that?
It's not easy.
No, it isn't, and kudos to you because you know how it is. And realizing that, when you're interviewed for a TV news spot, they'll ask you 20 minutes of questions, and you're lucky if a 30-second soundbite, and they're going to nitpick and squirrel like a squirrel looking for a nut, like that one thing that you kind of might have missaid or maybe could be misinterpreted, and that's what's going to end up on the news.
She's 100% right. So
Absolutely.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we, for those that are watching the program that don't know the history of the Tea Party, offer some historical perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, funny thing is, I had never been that politically active. Now, I'm the daughter of a World War II veteran. I'm the 4th of 5 children, and I was kind of born late. I have an 18-year-old sister who back in 1962, yes, I'm dating myself. In fact, I turned 60 years old last week. I have no pride, so I'll throw that out there. So as a daughter of a World War II veteran, I always voted. From my 18th birthday, it was election year, I voted. And I was always taught that as my civic duty. But I never got involved in politics. I'm not a registered Republican. That's the first misconception about Carole Thorpe. I'm not now, nor have I ever been, a member of the Republican Party. I'm not a fan of party politics. I see the necessity for them. We have to have candidates. That's how they're vetted and how they get on tickets. But that's about all the use I have for party politics. There's a lot of things that I don't like about it. But in terms of how I've gone into this, I was very concerned coming out of the Bush, and that's Bush II administration, with spending, particularly TARP. The number $787 billion rung really strong in my ear. And I thought, we're spending ourselves into oblivion. It didn't start with him, but it was really ramping up. And as you said, the fabulous Matthew, I'm raising Matthew, and I'm thinking, okay, well, what kind of a future for him? For I have a lot of nieces and nephews, are we just spending ourselves into an oblivion? So I'm hearing this. I'm seeing the potential presidency of Barack Obama coming in, and I'm thinking, well, Katie barred the door. Now we're really talking about some spending. And of course, he didn't disappoint because that pedal hit the floor. I mean, he barely got into office. I mean, when he was first elected, I thought, okay, let me see what happens here. And then sure enough, we got, spending out the wazoo with Barack Obama. So then I heard an advertisement on WCHV radio with the great Joe Thomas. There's going to be a meeting downtown in the pavilion something called the Tea Party. I'd never heard of it. Nobody had ever heard of it. It was something new. I did a little research. This guy named Santelli on CNBC had talked about this country needs to go back to the days of the Boston Tea Party. Now, T stands for taxed enough already. That was another misconception. These people didn't think they were going back to revolutionary times, and it really was the Boston Tea Party recreated. T was an acronym for taxed enough already. Bad marketing on the Tea Party's part. They didn't explain that very well from the get-go. So I show up on a cold, rainy Wednesday. I'm one of the first people down there. Made my first political sign ever. And as I sat down there and waited for this event to start, I'm not kidding you, anywhere between, over the course of 3 hours, the estimate was between 1,100 low ball and 1,400 high ball.
People
In downtown Charlottesville.
On a Wednesday, rainy
Wednesday, show up to watch the great Joe Thomas, along with the great Rob Schilling, and 3 hours worth of conservative-based, low taxation, all these people who normally would get run out of town on the rail people. Lawrence Eagleburger, the late Lawrence Eagleburger was, I think, the keynote speaker that day. Couldn't believe my eyes. Because I'd lived in Charlottesville long enough to know, even though I wasn't politically active, excuse me, I'm going to get a sip of water.
Sure, 100%. You understood the ideology of
I knew the town before I moved here, because again, I'd always check so I knew. And I thought, wow, it ain't just me, there's something going on here. So time goes on, I go to a couple more events. We do our first bus trip to D.C. William Hay was the chair and one of the organizers at that time, along with a group of other people. And then Will Hay decides that he wants to manage one of the campaigns of the 7, in fact, Ken Boyd was one of them, one of the 7 folks that were going to run for the Republican nomination to run against Tom Perriello.
5th District.
Right, 5th District.
Congress.
Right. Bill Hay wisely decided and knew, conflict of interest. I can't do that as the Tea Party head. Bill looks around and says, oh, well, we need a new Tea Party head. Who's it going to be? Well, early on, I did my natural thing. I'm a great organizer. I'd been on the bus trips. I'd been one of the early people. Yeah, sure, I'll sign people in. Yeah, sure, we don't have any money in the coffers. I'll organize the first fundraiser, that kind of thing. Carole, would you do it? Well, how can I say no? I said, well, I'll be the interim, and then well, that was it. So 11 months after sitting in the front row, the first person there, I'm running the thing. And I'm trying to raise my son Matthew with my husband and Matthew's father. But Matthew at this point was a young teen. We'd kind of gotten over the early real hump of the early years, and I needed an adult outlet. I'd been home. I wasn't working. I'd been home with Matthew all that time. So the timing seemed ordained almost for this. And I prayed on it a lot, and I thought, okay, I didn't get to serve in the armed services. I've never been shot at or anything. I didn't put it on that kind of level. But, this is my calling. I sort of felt like maybe my country's calling me to do my little part in something. So that's what I went ahead and did. And that's how I came to the Tea Party.
So the Tea Party gets in the news. This is the first impression, or second impression. First I hear from Joe. Okay. Boss at the time. He's a broadcaster, for those that don't know, Monticello Media, great boss as well. Extremely talented broadcaster, award-winning broadcaster, Joe Thomas. And then I remember the Occupy Wall Street and then the Occupy Charlottesville movement. This was in the park. What's the park called now? Is it Market Street Park?
What it is this week, I don't know. Back then it was Lee Park.
Then it, I think is it Market Street Park now? I don't know. The park on Market Street.
At one point we had Celebration. I've lost track. Truly, I have. To me, it'll always be Lee Park.
Okay, so
not because of the statue, but because of what you're talking about.
Sure. The park on Market Street, and I remember the Occupy Charlottesville movement, and I was working in media for the Daily Progress at the time, and we were covering the story, the paper, and you have an incredible memory. So you can offer some good perspective here. I go walking through the park, and I see
Quite a stroll, wasn't it?
It was quite a stroll.
Makes impression.
It was like the Wild West.
Yeah.
I'll cut to the chase. There was no law. There was a lot of folks that didn't live in the community that were in this Occupy Charlottesville movement. In a lot of ways, nomads traveling from city to city, pushing this Occupy movement. And what I remember, and you jump in here, what I remember was Dave Norris, who's a friend of the program.
And the mayor at the time.
And the mayor of Charlottesville at the time. And we love Dave. He's come on the show a lot of times.
I like Dave.
He's a friend of the program.
Dave and I have sung karaoke together, but that's another story.
That story will come up.
Photographic evidence, Dave. You can't get out of it, my friend.
Look at the camera. Look at your media talent, Carole Thorpe.
Dave
I
Norris,
love Carole Thorpe. Someone tag Dave Norris, and let's get him in the mix here and make sure he's watching the show.
Dave's now going into the witness protection program.
Dave, please jump in the mix. Walk us through the Occupy Charlottesville movement, how it tied the Tea Party and Dave Norris and you in the mix.
Well,
this is a great story.
It's difficult for me to talk about on the grand scale. And let me preface this by saying, when I talk Tea Party, there's two different conversations.
Okay.
There's the National Tea Party, and then there's the Jefferson area Tea Party.
You're talking Jefferson area.
I know, and we will. But you have to understand, when a lot of people get their perception of the Tea Party, like it's like all one big thing. Give me 30 seconds on this, and it's going to be more than 30 seconds, but I'll try to shorten it down. The Tea Party movement nationally, understand that sort of like Black Lives Matter says that they have it's not a top-down organization. They kind of got that from the Tea Party. While there was a national group that tried to claim that, oh yeah, we're the Tea Party Patriots, Tea Party Express, it really was, you'll just have to take my word for it, it was a grassroots movement. It was little groups in little towns all over the country, including right here in Charlottesville, Virginia, that formed based on what Rick Santelli's rant was and a couple of other things, and Joe Thomas's radio station from some of his listeners saying, hey, we believe this, we want to get on that, let's have our own little local thing, and a rally, and from that the group spin. We never took, and I'm serious, my hand to God, we never took one dime in all the years we operated from any national group, from the Republican Party, from the local Republican Party, ACRC, Albemarle, nobody. We were 100% member funded. We answered to nobody except ourselves. Nobody's puppet. We did what we did. We took responsibility for what we did. And if we did anything right or wrong, I got up as media spokesperson and the chairwoman and spoke for it, period. And as such, I refuse to answer for any other. I don't care if it was the Danville Tea Party, the Lynchburg Tea Party. Now, they did some transgressions down there I wasn't too happy with, and when they did it, I called them out on it. There was none of this brotherhood, sisterhood thing. I said, look, you guys, you've got your own sandbox down there, and guess what? Your sandbox is right-leaning. I play in a different sandbox in Charlottesville, okay? And I have to cross my T's and dot my I's up here. And besides that, I wouldn't even do some of the stuff you did down there. But I digress. So now as far as Occupy, the same thing. There was a national Occupy movement. And on the local levels, as I'm sure they did here in Charlottesville, hey, we want to get in on that. There are people locally who said, we believe in the Occupy Wall Street movement. We're going to form an Occupy Charlottesville. And you know what? Kudos to them. I might not believe in everything they said, but I'm very much in favor of citizen-based activism. But here's what I do expect. Just as we did with the Jefferson Area Tea Party, laws are made, laws are meant to be changed even, but we have mechanisms for doing that. Law-abiding citizens. You don't like a law or a code, you work to change it. That's what we did with the Tea Party. We didn't, whenever we had a rally, okay, this town had rules. You had to fill out an application. You had limits on how many people you could have in a park. You had to make deposits. You had to do A, B, C, D, and E. We always did that. In fact, I'll tell you why we always did that, because if we didn't, you would have heard about it yesterday. So the Jefferson Area Tea Party, we always did that. Here was our beef with Occupy. And this was always a misconception. And to anybody who was with Occupy and thought that Carole Thorpe was a big enemy of what you were doing, I wasn't. I was never against you guys personally, and our group wasn't against you. Here's what we were against. We were against city council bending over backwards to say, oh, insurance, you guys don't have to have that. We're okay with that.
In the park.
Yeah, in the park.
On city property.
Yeah. You want to serve food, you want to have whatever, that's okay, you guys can do that. Kristen Zako sat up there at one city council meeting and said, gee, guys, I mean, do you think we could use city funds and pay for porta potties to put in the park to help them? That's what got me. And I said, no way. I said, what applies to one applies to all. The political favoritism is what we stood up against. Can you imagine, it would never happen, but could you imagine, put the shoe on the other foot, if Charlottesville had been a Republican majority city council, how the liberals, progressives, whatever, Democratic Socialists in this town, the uproar there would have been had the Tea Party gone to that body and said, can you guys pay for porta potties for us? Can you waive that $1 million insurance thing? Can you pay for our electrical while we're there? I'm a big gal, but my you-know-what would have still been run out of town on a rail somehow. That's what I objected to. That's why I went to Dave Norris. That's why I went to Holly Edwards and the whole 5 of them on that dais and said, excuse me, that's wrong. I don't care. It's not the group. Now, naturally, the group members heard it, and they thought we were attacking them. And I could sort of understand, we were making their lives not fun.
Occupy thought the Tea Party was attacking them.
Mm-hmm. I get it. And for those who thought that, I'm sorry.
And how did council respond to you guys?
The same way they did every time I walked in that room. It's funny, I've been here now long enough to see a cycle. Back in the day when I would walk in there and say, my name is Carole Thorpe, I'm chair of the Jefferson Area Tea Party, for my 3 minutes.
You're saying they wouldn't?
I might as well not even bother to show up.
You're saying they didn't pay attention to you?
Oh, yeah. And not only that, but here's the thing that they didn't know. The reason I went down there, I knew they weren't going to listen to me. I knew they didn't care. I had 3 minutes, and those 3 minutes weren't for them. It was for them. There's a live camera that's on city council for 3 minutes. And I was addressing the people at home that were watching the meetings. I was getting my whatever my statement was in the record. That's what I was doing. That's why I, quote, wasted my time going down there. That was the whole point of that exercise. Now it's interesting because I've had a very entertaining couple of years watching city council meetings while some of their ex-supporters and the other side of the aisle have gone in there and made their lives miserable, roasted them, gotten up and danced on the dais as I've seen it. The whole political thing has shifted.
How do you think it shifted? How do you characterize the shift?
I think at a certain point...
Because it's always been left-leaning.
The kids rebel.
Okay, explain that.
You spoil them too much and they get too full of themselves. They come to expect, after a while, that, gee, you did us favors last week, last month, last year. How come not now? And then also the individuals on city council go on and off, and their personal agendas are how far do they, in this case, left they lean, changes. So, their agendas change. Certainly seen that with the election of Nakia Walker. Her agenda was in many ways different than some of the old guard Democrats that were even in office when I was with the Tea Party. How do you,
and we've been very vocal about former Mayor Nakia Walker on the show. One thing I've always said on the show about former Mayor Nakia Walker was I respected her hustle and her chutzpah. Mm-hmm. She ran on a campaign of unmasking the illusion, and she stuck true to her beliefs throughout the term, despite a splintering in her base as the term matured. And the early parts of her campaign, her base and following was strong and galvanized around her. As her term matured, it splintered and members got fewer and far between, but she still stuck true to what she believed in. And it takes a lot of internal fortitude to do that.
It might shock her to hear this, but I would concur with everything you just said. She's a smart woman.
She is. Very smart.
And
first in her family to graduate from college.
Well, she has a degree in political science,
VCU.
if I understand correctly. She reeks of commitment, and that is to be admired. Here's where I had problems with her, and I think even if she hears me say this now, she still would disagree with me to this day. And again, this goes back to some of the rules and again, I'm not inflexible. I don't want to come off like that to anybody. But, early on when we were having the literal chaos in city chambers, and that was a carryover from Mayor Mike Signer when he couldn't and wouldn't control the situation. I appreciate people's passion. They should speak truth to power. But unless there's a certain amount of order, you're not heard and nothing gets done. We can't have people standing on the dais and rolling out sides. Hey, I've done 30 years, which we didn't cover, I've done 30 years of theater, both as an actress and as a director and a singer and all those things. I get theater. That kind of theater there can be counterproductive.
Dysfunctional.
Yeah, it gets you that moment's attention, but you lose your message. Because people say, wow, look at these people, and they're making noise, and at the end of it, I say, well, what were they saying? You blew it. If you can't...
It was the pomp and circumstance and not the words that actually matter.
But what were you saying?
Right.
You've blown your moment. You had live TV. You had people, and the headline in the Daily Progress the next day was chaos breaks out at City Council meeting.
We said the word at the same time, chaos.
Right. So what have you accomplished? If you got the headline, but you lost the story, what have you done? See, that was one thing with the Tea Party we never did. I could, like I said, I'm a director, I'm a creative person. I could have made political theater, I could have done all of that kind of shtick, but I didn't, because you lose the message. And if the message is the most important thing.
No doubt.
So getting back to the mayor. So the most, and I will say disappointing thing, and not that she gives a rat's patootie about whether Carole Thorpe's disappointed in her or not. The wasted opportunity that she had, and my disappointment is that she could have accomplished, in my estimation, humble opinion, one person's opinion, so much more, and have done, in my opinion, so much less damage, not only to what she considers, well, I won't even phrase it, but to her own interests as well as to other people's interests. If she had just been a little smarter, a little more thoughtful, controlled in the way she did things. That's the regret I have about her mayorship. And the double regret is that I think she had it in her, and I think she was smart enough. It was a choice. It wasn't because she was incapable. When you talk about local politics, I mean, look at the professions of the 5 people who are on council now. Go back the last 5 councils, okay? I know she's got a political science degree, but we're talking about people. These are not folks who have a political career. They're not climbing the ladder for the most part to a next political job,
sure.
Right? So your expectations for the animal politic have to be tempered. I'm saying even with that aside, it disappointed me because I think she was capable of more. It was a choice she made not to be. And I don't know what drove that. I don't know if it was, I'm getting called for national interviews, magazines, whatever. She wanted to, she was putting something else above the good of the city. I tend to think that, unfortunately, might have been what drove her, but I can't speak to it. Only she can speak to that.
Sure. Folks are asking about the Occupy movement. Mm-hmm. What ended up, from your recollection, being the end of Occupy Charlottesville?
So it caved in and of itself. The worst of human nature came out. And I've heard you say this before, Jerry, and I will correct you on one thing.
Please.
There were more local people involved with this than you think. Yes, there were some outside people that came in. I can't really quote you a ratio, but I do think it was much more locally based than outside people. All right, so we have Occupy. They start the encampments. They go to City Council. Can you not charge us for this? Can we do this? Can we stay in? And the main thing was that they were allowed to stay in the park much longer. It was extended. It was extended. It was extended. Because normally you can only be there for a rally or an event for a certain amount of time. First, City Council said, well, by the nature of this, because it's an encampment and the way that the National will occupy, you're occupying. Well, occupying doesn't mean 24 hours. You're occupying. Okay, you can stay a couple days, then you can stay a week. Well, this went on for a couple of months.
Was it that long?
It was, yeah. Yeah, it started in October, and they finally got dragged out of there, what was it, December 1st? Something like that. So now even and the conditions in the park are degrading.
They deteriorated.
It's the hygiene of the folks. They were serving food. The police were getting called there quite a bit. There were underage girls there that had situations. There's a famous sign. I have a picture of it. Among a list of things that the folks were wanting, 100 rape whistles. There was one out of town. Well, he used to be a local. I'm not going to name him, but a lot of people know who he is. A Charlottesville person who eventually went out to California. They held one of their tribal meetings. They have no leadership. There's no one leader. We're all leaders. But they kicked him out of camp. And then it basically said, if you don't, we're going to get you arrested. And he ended up going back to California. He has since, I guess, come back to town, of my understanding. But anyway, it got worse and worse and worse. The heat was turned up on City Council, and even they realized this can't go on forever. So as soon as they started realizing we're losing the favor of City Council, then they started to slowly turn. They ended up burning Dave Norris in effigy.
I remember that.
Yeah. How the mighty have fallen. I wouldn't even wish that on Dave Norris. I mean, I like Dave Norris personally. See, this is a thing, and we'll get into that for a second, but I don't care if it was Tom Perriello, Dave Norris, Dennis Rooker. I like to think, and I've been told by them, and it's by relationship, just because we have political differences, I don't think we ever spoke a nasty word about each other personally. And that kind of politics now is just about gone.
Yeah, it's very different.
Everything now is personal. You treat each other with respect. Yeah, you go toe-to-toe on the issues and you back that up, but you don't have to tear each other apart to do it. But anyway, so they burned Dave in effigy and all this kind of thing, and they were getting all this pressure. So finally, City Council said, okay, this is the date, this is the time, you got to go, or Charlottesville Finest is going to yank you out of the park, and that's exactly what happened. And even when that happened, Kristen Zakos that night was there. She stood not with Charlottesville police, but stood with the occupiers, which I thought was quite telling, because Charlottesville police had every name in the book yelled at them. Not that they're not big girls and boys and couldn't take it, but I mean, Charlottesville City Council should be backing up the police. They're there to do their jobs as ordered by City Council. I watched live via Facebook that night. I thought the Charlottesville police were incredibly professional in the way they handled it. Had to be done. They were given every opportunity to leave and would not leave on their own accord. So this is what happens. At some point you have to end it. If you won't be big girls and boys and end it yourself, it's going to get ended.
That's a lot of what I remember as well. This is one of the time. What year was that?
That was in 2011. Yes.
Okay.
In fact, the 10th year anniversary of that was just last year.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That is 11 years ago.
It'll be 11 years in this December, yeah.
Time flies.
Tell me.
How do you characterize, and we'll add Albemarle County in the mix. Judah's going to get your picture here in a matter of moments.
Okay.
When he does, we'll get you smiling here for the camera.
All right.
Carole Thorpe, guys, our guest. If you want to give him a smile here, Judah Whitcower is our enterprising director. The your take or your perspective on the city now, today, 2022. We got
the whole city.
I'll paint. Let's talk government.
Okay.
I'll paint a couple of things that I'm seeing. I'm seeing an unnecessary push to tax, a concerning push. Maybe unnecessary is not the right word because we're strapped financially. And
It's always the first go-to. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah.
That has not changed.
right, and that frustrates the bejeebus out of me.
We're a party of two, my friend.
Yeah, okay, frustrates the bejeebus out of all three of us.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, Judah.
equilateral triangle here.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but I'll cut to the chase. The city is strapped financially. We
And it's a hole they've dug.
Yeah.
They've dug this hole.
and that's a fair point. This is not on the shoulders of current council. They are paying for the sins of their predecessors now. They are left with massive projects, one of them school reconfiguration, that has been promised for a decade plus. And now it's crescendoed to incredibly deteriorating conditions at Buford. And 5 people, as you've very well described, 5 people on council that are locals. These aren't political pros. These are people in the community, everyday people in the community. The likelihood of any of those 5 climbing the political ladder is slim and far between. So we're in this position where 5 people are being under serious duress and pressure from friends, family, and other community members to start spending money. School reconfiguration, affordable housing, climate change, bike and pedestrian safety, infrastructure, downtown improvements. I mean, it's a Christmas list. It's a good kids Christmas list.
It's all hitting a big wave tsunami.
It's all hitting at the same time.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So the immediate response is taxes. 10-cent tax rate increase being advertised. The assessments are going up. Property taxes, folks don't realize, and the Commissioner of Revenue, Todd Divers, has highlighted this in multiple meetings. I know you follow it.
I
follow
saw
it.
I saw him live on City Council.
He pleaded. He
Yes,
said people will be banging
I
down
love your
our door.
analogy of Paul Revere getting on the horse riding down the downtown mall. It's exactly what he did.
That is what he did.
That's
He said
exactly what he
people
did.
are going to hate me that these property taxes are going to go so far, but he has to price the real property, the vehicles, based on market value, and the used car market, as we all know, is obscenely out of control. So here's what I'm going to ask you here. We have all these things colliding at the same time. How do you characterize what is going on now? Like, where do you want to go with this topic?
Well,
Because I know you follow it.
Well, yeah, I follow it. My solution would have been to not let it have gotten this far all along. I mean, I would have done more incrementally in years past. You have 3 counselors there who were there for the last budgeting cycle. So, I mean,
McGill, Payne, and Snook.
They do have they have at least a toe on the can that was kicked down the road. We have to.
That's fair.
At least in one budget cycle, anyway, that they, said, no, we won't raise the taxes, the property taxes this year. But that's a toe or a toenail on this. We have a one-party government. We have, and I use the word stranglehold, and that's taken in this community. Every time I hear it, I smile, because I'm not going to say I was the first person to say it, but I think I popularized it. The Democrat socialist they have a stranglehold on city government. And for all the people who complain about Republicans / conservatives, can't blame them in Charlottesville. Because, other than Rob Schilling, and even when he was on there, he was in the minority. He was the only one sitting there.
Yeah.
Voting minority. In Charlottesville, if you don't like, I don't care what it is, the Belmont Bridge is crumbling, you don't like the fact that, Crescent Halls has had all its problems, you don't like the fact that the roads are what they are, you don't like the fact that anything is what it is, one side of the aisle has been running this city for decades.
Okay, besides,
but
go ahead.
But to say, as far as where it's, and that includes all the planning, that's what happened. So go back to your councils that were led by Dave Norris and Satyendra Huja and Mike Signer, and that's just in the time that I've been here. What were you doing? You were wasting your time with things like Occupy Charlottesville and this commission and that whatever and spending your, and all of this in the meantime has not been handled properly. And when you have government that is two sides and can challenge each other, you at least have a hope of this. But that water's now under the bridge.
So maybe it's, and I hate to say this because they watch the program, is it the citizens to blame?
Well, they are in part because you put them there. By the other token, they're who you had to vote for.
Touche.
By the other token, my God, you got this hand and that hand and the other hand. The last time that you guys out there had a real choice was when Buddy Weber and Mike Ferrugio ran for city council.
What year was that?
It wasn't recently, it was a couple of cycles ago, but you had two, they were both ran as Republicans. Mike Ferrugio is an ex-police officer.
Sure.
Buddy Ferrugio's an attorney. Both two highly accomplished gentlemen who love CVille, and you didn't elect them. And I thought that was a golden opportunity. Not that they're the saviors, not that, but that would have been a good start to a shared power, to checks and balances, to different voices on the dais. But I think there are so many people in this city that are just so used to, where's the D on the end of the name? Well, that's it. You hurt yourselves, because here's now where you've got a problem. Who in this town is going to run to give you a choice? I've got news for you. I live in Albemarle County. You've dubbed me the Queen of Jack Jewett, and thank you for that. I'm now royalty. I think that's what you do, right? Royalty. But if I lived in city limits, and I have toyed, sorry, Diantha McKeel, I have toyed with the idea at time at running a Jack Jewett.
Kevin Higgins, the King of Greenwood's watching, says, run for something, Carole, please.
Well, I live in Jack Jewett. Part of why I haven't run has been Jack Jewett is in the urban ring, and so soaked with Democrats as the city is, I'm not sure I could get elected dog catcher no matter what. I'm just not sure there's enough of a conservative / Republican / Tea Party base there that I could get elected, even if I put the. And the sad thing is, I'm not a Republican.
Yeah. I
actually consider myself an independent because while I am fiscally conservative and have the Tea Party, all of that, and I'm liberty-minded, and taxes and all those kinds of things. On social issues, I'm actually quite liberal.
Okay,
With my theater background and all that, and I take one issue at a time. I'm not just like, well, this is the right side of the aisle, so this is how I think. I disagrrough with Joe Thomas on things. I disagree with Rob Schilling on things. I disagree with my husband on things. You know what? I disagree.
You agree with Lloyd Snook on things.
I agreed. Some parts of city council, they would be surprised. Tanisha Hudson. I called up Tanisha Hudson, I think it was now a year and a half ago. I was watching her on city council. People might not think Tanisha Hudson and I have anything in common. And I said, Tanisha, I said, you don't know me? No, my name is Carole Thorpe. Would you like to go out for a drink and for dinner? And I bought her dinner. And we sat and we talked for like 4 hours. We had a lot more in common than most people would think. And I was impressed by the way she addressed city council. Now, sometimes maybe in a little feistier manner than I might, some more colorful language than I ever have. But again, smart, impressed me. And I wanted her to know it, and I just thought, we need more people like you. Your style's not my style? Okay. But we need more of this. Earl Smith. You mentioned Earl Smith earlier. There's another sharp cookie. This community and the outlying community have so much talent, so many smart people that are not being tapped. But here's the problem. You shut them out. If you're always going to vote one way. And by the way, what have they done for you lately in Charlottesville? Again, what has 30, 40, 50 years of all Democrat city council rule, or effectively all Democrat because they have the voting power, look around and what has it brought you? There's a lot of great things about CVille, but all these things you talked about where they're in the hole or where things are crumbling or things have been, they own that. They built that.
Wild Bill McKenzie said he voted for Handy Mike. Mm-hmm. And he also highlighted Bellamy Brown, who ran as an independent, not getting elected.
Yeah.
And Bellamy Brown is someone on this show and this network that we have really
I think Bellamy could have gotten a lot of things done.
had the back of Bellamy Brown in a lot of ways on this network.
You can't. I love the old saying, "Throw the bums out." And I'm not categorizing anybody on city council as a bum, but I'm talking about the idea of let's make a change. But they use it. You can't throw them out if there's going to be nobody else to fill in, and people aren't going to run. They're not going to raise all that money, put all that time in. Charlottesville votes what, 85, 90% Democrat in like all elections. Why waste their time in their shoe leather? They're not going to do it.
Okay, let me throw this to you here. I think we're in an interesting time of local politics, statewide politics, in politics at the federal level. We are in this climate where inflation is running rapid. We just got out of a 2-year pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
A pandemic no one was prepared for. Spent a lot of time inside. Quality of life for Americans was certainly impacted by this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation, no one expected. This Ukrainian-Russian war, no one expected coming out of a pandemic.
There's a saying, it's not one thing, it's everything.
It's everything.
It's everything. It's a tsunami. Like
this is the point I'm making here, and I'll throw it back to you here.
Yeah.
Do we think that is going to have an impact politically on how folks are going to vote? Midterms are on the horizon, and I love talking about this stuff because I know you love talking about it.
Sure. Oh, I do.
Do we think that's going to have an influence or impact on how folks vote? We saw with Youngkin and with what the right was able to do this past November. The Youngkin win was, you would characterize surprising. Not you, I mean in general. The Commonwealth is certainly leaning more purple than the blue it has been for some time. But the Youngkin win, I think, surprised a lot of people. How do you think that this stuff since this past November is going to change?
It did. Youngkin win. Well, the taste for another term of Terry McAuliffe.
Yeah. Okay.
Really turned a lot of people sour. In fact, I want to thank the Democrat Party for nominating Terry McAuliffe, because I think if they nominated anybody else, we may still, but that sealed it. That's just my personal opinion.
I think that's not a bad opinion.
I think, just saying. But as far as, that's my Long Island coming out, just saying. As I can live in Virginia almost half of my life, and still there's little Long Island going in there. As far as and I did that too. Your point one more time, please.
How the ideology or how the mood in the booth, the voter booth, may change because of this collision of uncertainty associated with inflation, post-pandemic, market volatility, quality of life being impacted, the wave that we saw that happened this past November, this Russian-Ukrainian war, and how all these factors could change mindsets.
I think that's two-pronged. I think we were somewhat already on a path, a little bit of heading like into the midterms we were going to get a change, at least on the national scene. Gasoline prices were already spiking before this all happened, and you don't have to go to Fox News for that. CNBC and a number of places have lovely charts where they were already starting to go up before that. So the president and the current government needs to take some responsibility for that. In terms of other things, things weren't going so well in the country after the first beginning of the Biden presidency, I should say, already, and it's just ramped up and gotten worse. The same thing with what's going on with the Congress. So the only thing I'm afraid of, frankly, is that everybody's going to say, well, the whole country is going to hell in a handbasket, so maybe we just say it was just a bad year or an off year, let the Democrats off the hook, because this would have happened to anybody. Don't let that happen, because we were already on a trajectory of things going poorly. This is just exacerbating it. But again, and I'm going to put it down to our community and maybe even our state, you have the quote, the other side that are going to do one of two things. Either they're so beaten down and so whatever that they're just like, do I want to take the time and fundraise and get all out there? We've lost X number of elections. Yes, Youngkin was elected. Was that an anomaly? Was it a bad candidate on the other side that just made a nice opportunity? Or is this a trend? So it's either going to be, we're just beaten down, maybe that was a one-shot deal, or maybe the country is finally getting it and we do have an opportunity here, and let's get out there and really give them a chance. But the one thing that conservatives, Republicans, I keep having to put it in that, let's call it the right basket, the right-wing basket. What the right-wing basket does not do well, it always tells you what's wrong, but it doesn't promote its own ideas well, okay? Taxes are necessary, okay? As the mother of a 25-year-old son who, despite the fact that his parents have tried to plan for him, every penny, he's going to outlive us. He has no siblings. Some point, he is going to be relying on the kindness of strangers for the rest of his life. He already receives some benefits through SSDI and Medicaid. So when somebody says to me, Carole Thorpe, you're against taxes, no, I'm not. There are people in this society who are truly helpless and need help. My son will never work a job. He'll never own a home. He'll never marry. He can't support himself. He lives in an adult group home and goes to day support. He still watches Barney and Blue's Clues. This is a 25-year-old who still watches preschool TV and functions on that level. 6'6", beautiful young man, but young in spirit and young in heart, okay? We have veterans in this country for whom we have to fulfill a promise. You went to war, you served, you're injured, we now need to take care of you. We have other folks that for other reasons, be it other physical, mental handicap, whatever it is, we need to take care of you because you cannot do it. What makes me angrier than anything are people who, rather than just getting that hand up to help themselves, are perpetual, year after year after year, digging into the system. Not only taxing us as taxpayers, but I'll use the word stealing from those who truly need the help, and people who are on waiting list after waiting list after waiting list because they can't get the funds, and these people truly need it. You want to talk about something that gets me angry, don't get me started on all of that. So taxation is necessary because we as a compassionate society, we as a moral society, we choose and we feel compelled to help those in true need. The taxation that bugs me, and I just cleaned that up, that word, is like you say, the taxation that will gentrify a community, the regressive taxes, there are plenty of unnecessary taxes, the wasteful spending, the spending 3 or 4 times. And I'll put it to the city. The city managers were paying multiple on. The endless commissions that some of them are fruitful, some of them have not been. We have all kinds of things that we're paying for, have paid for and paid for and paid for again and again. And yet when I walked out here on the street, put my walker, which I walk with a walker, it dipped into a pothole. And I'm like, why hasn't that pothole been fixed? Because when I directed in Play On Theater, which used to have offices in this building, that pothole was still out here, and that was about 10 years ago, right off that curb. Still hasn't been fixed. And so there's all these kinds of things with government that just toast my bread. So we do have to pay taxes, but we need smart people that can spend them wisely, and realize that every penny you take out of somebody's pocket, they're a parent. They're raising a child in a home. So you're taking bread out of that kid's mouth or out of their education. And so when they take that money from you and they're saying, oh, look at us, we're the government, aren't we wonderful? We're going to do this or do that for you. You've also hurt that family. You've hurt that school. You've hurt that whatever, because it's a shell game with the dollars. and understand that nobody is going to spend that money more wisely or more frugally than the person who worked and earned for it. And there are some people who can't work and earn for their money. They're either not sound mind or body. Absolutely, we help them. But there's a whole lot of people in this country for a long time who have taken advantage of that, and we need to weed those people out. Again, you need a hand up temporarily? Sure, we do that. Because this is America, and we're one of the most generous people in the world. But otherwise, we need to start cleaning that up, and we need people in office who need to learn a simple word: no. Sometimes in some places you have to say no. And I would be happy to serve in Jack Jewett District. I guarantee you I would serve for only one term, because I'll say no. And I probably would, if I could even manage to get reelected, I probably wouldn't get elected. I probably wouldn't get reelected. But I could sleep at night.
Talk to us about your son, Matthew.
My favorite topic. 3 weeks after we moved to Charlottesville in 1995, I found out I was expecting. That was unexpected. And so I never went back to work and raised Matthew. Now, Matthew at 18 months was not eating Cheerios. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't saying mama, dada, any of those things. And I took him to our local doctor, and I said, I know I'm a book parent at this point, because although I had brothers and sisters, I really hadn't had little brothers and sisters. I said, he's not doing anything in the book here. And I said, I've been home with him every day. What's going on? Carol, boys are slow, watching. I said, okay. Brought him home. Same thing was happening. I say, sensitive to light. He's sort of colicky. I brought him back to the doctor. I said, okay. I said, I'm going to leave your office today. I said, one of two things is going to happen. I said, very nicely. I said, either I'm going to leave here with a referral for a specialist or somebody to see Matthew. I said, or I'm going to be looking for another doctor, meaning this is the last time we'll see you. He kind of patted me on the shoulder and gave me a referral up to Kluge, which used to be the center here attached to UVA. I think they've since closed that. And they had Matthew diagnosed right away. Now, the way they did it was interesting. They said, Miss Thorpe, has anybody said the word autism to you before? I thought that was an interesting way to say, we think your son has autism. But I said, no, not before today. Is that applying to Matthew? I said, yeah, we think that's what we might be dealing with here. So they did some more testing and such, and we had Matthew diagnosed before he turned 2, which is very early. The average age is about 5 years old. And a lot of that is because a lot of parents have been told, your son or daughter's slow. Wait a while, whatever. Well, we had Matthew in special needs preschool, which is Albemarle County has here. So he started at age 2, and he was there from 2, 3, and 4. Then we put him in the county autism program from kindergarten through grade 5, and then the middle school program and the high school program. Charlottesville has Virginia Institute of Autism, wonderful school, but for reasons I won't go into here, they do a very specific program that's very repetitive, and we sort of felt like for Matthew's his development, his spirit, it wasn't a good match. And also, we believed that Matthew could also be a teacher. We felt that taking him out and isolating him from the general population in the schools was not a good thing, because we thought he's going to have to live in the world. And so for students at a regular middle school or a typical high school, to be around him, to see him in the cafeteria, the library, such, that could be informative for them, would be a good thing. And so Matthew actually graduated with a special diploma with Albemarle High School in 2014. And then a lot of people don't know this, but special ed kids are entitled to 4 years of post-high education. They offer that here locally, but it wasn't well matched to him. So at that point, we actually moved him to the Chesterfield area. And so that's when we became empty nesters and moved him into the school there. And when he finished that 3 years ago, then we moved him into an adult group home there. He lives with 5 other guys. And then he attends a 5-day-a-week day support program, which is sort of like, he calls it school. It's sort of like a continuation of that. But Matthew is very low verbal. He will say, if he saw you, he'd say, hi, I want Pop-Tart, please. He's very smart. He knows to ask adults for things. Like I said, he's 6'6". If you're looking at Matthew, you're looking at me. Very much the same coloring. Our face is very, very similar, without the makeup, of course. But Matthew is very sweet. He'll bow that tall head down to get a kiss on the forehead. He loves Blue's Clues, and Blue's Clues just came back on. If people don't know Blue's Clues, was on Nickelodeon back in the day when Matthew was a young man, and everything old is new again. They've just rebooted with a new host. Has Trey seen it?
Trey has seen it.
See, now I can quote you chapter and verse with Blue's Clues because I have every VHS, DVD, every product. My husband and I have often said there's a special place in heaven because most parents have maybe 3 to 5 years of Blue's Clues, Barney, the Wiggles, all these guys. We're going on year 26, and I don't begrudge a minute of it, but it plays in my head 24/7 because especially when he was home, that's what we used to do in here. But he's the light of our lives. Even though he doesn't live with us, I call myself I'm the CEO of Matthew because I still I do everything from buy and order clothes for him and take care of all his financial, legal affairs. And we visit with him twice a month. We get a hotel room and we go down to Richmond and spend the weekend down there. So we get to go all over town, take a mini golf, swimming, bowling, lots of fast food. He loves that. And then 1 weekend a month, then he comes up to Charlottesville and visits with us. So, and as I said, unfortunately, if nature goes as it will go, we will predecease him. But we have him in very good hands, and he's in God's hands, which is best of all. So,
Carole, you're a great mom.
Thank you.
You're a great mom.
And I will say, let me add this too. If there's anybody out there who is, especially if you're embarking on this journey, I hope you won't have somebody who says to you, gee, has anybody ever said the word autism to you? I hope in 25 years they've come up with a better way of breaking that news. But Jerry knows how to get in touch with me. I would be more than happy to talk with you or to answer any questions. I'm not the end-all and be-all, but I have been there from kindergarten now through the end of high school, and if I don't have an answer, I can probably get it for you. I'm very much in support, by the way. Let me put a shout-out to Bennett's Village. And I've spoken to the lady who lost her son, who's fundraising for that. I contacted her because I wanted to know. I said, well, when my Matthew comes home on weekends, being 6'6", he loves the playground, loves swings. We have this big swing in our backyard that's like weight rated for like 550 pounds. I mean, it is cemented in the ground. That thing is going nowhere. And we've had it for like 15 years. I said, he loves the swing. I said, well, we would love to take him there. And she said, oh, yeah. She said, we're going to get playground equipment that's for all ages and adults and everything. I said, beautiful. Send her a check. I'm going to send her more. But I said, don't forget the adults. Because, and let me take a second for that too, if you have one more second. We all remember, and we see on the ads, they always show the little kids, and they should, the little kids. And I used to go on the radio with Rob and Joe a lot with this too and remind them that, barring a catastrophic illness or accident, the little kids that are autistic or whatever, my son has intellectual and developmental disability as well. They're going to grow up to be 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75 years old. And people don't think enough ahead in terms of housing, employment, continuing education, whatever it is. Charlottesville, unfortunately, they're kind of starting to catch up, but there's a reason why Matthew's in Chesterfield. There's a reason why a lot of the adult children of Charlottesville aren't here anymore, because there isn't and hasn't been very much for them. And while we're happy twice a month to, commute back and forth, I'm hoping one day that will change. And even when we were raising Matthew here, we would go out to restaurants or go different places, and for weeks, months at a time, and sometimes it's apparent, sometimes it isn't, but we would know we were the only person anywhere, that had a special needs child with us. And I'm like, well, I know they live in this town because they're in Matthew's school, they're in his class. Where are they? And I actually had a couple parents tell me, said, well, Carole, they kind of keep them aside here. They don't, community's not very open and welcome to them. They are when they're in school and when they're in Chesterfield and Richmond, it's like a cottage industry. You can't go into a movie theater or a Walmart or a restaurant. It's wonderful, or a park. And so when it came time, I told Marcus, I don't want to look in Charlottesville. I want to stay in Chesterfield. Matthew's already been down there a few years post-high. He's been around here. He knows where things are. He's familiar with being driven to it. I said, I just want to keep him here and let him be familiar. And so we'll make the drive because this is home to him now. And he feels welcome and such. And so, again, I guess I would say to folks out there as well, too, if you've got a child that's getting ready to go over that, what they call the invisible cliff, when your child ages out of school and turns 18 or 20, 21, 22, you might want to look at the Chesterfield and Richmond area. Again, maybe Charlottesville, they're catching up, but until such a time, the housing, the recreation, everything is down there.
I hope you hear this often. I really do. You are a great mom.
Thanks. I don't, because I'm not out as much nowadays, but thank you.
I sincerely mean that.
Thanks.
I enjoyed this show.
I did too. This has been well overdue. It has. Just meeting you, whether it was over the microphone or not.
Yeah.
Well overdue.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I appreciate you making the trip to downtown and showcasing some of the vulnerable aspects of your life. And I appreciate you enlightening us and highlighting your journey as a parent, championing not only Matthew, but a path or a pursuit for Matthew that you've had to learn maybe the hard way, but have figured out it's the right way.
Oh, it's the best way as long as he's happy.
I appreciate you.
Thank
You're
you.
a great mom.
I appreciate you too. And I hope this will be, and I hope whether it's here or elsewhere, not our last meeting.
It won't be. I promise.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It was our pleasure.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Carole Thorpe, very much have enjoyed this show. Thank you to Carole for joining us. Thank you for Judah, our director. And we hope you enjoyed the Friday edition of the I Love CVille Show. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. I want to thank Carole for the kind gifts that she's given to our son.
Courtesy of Matthew. They are.
Courtesy. We will
yes.
cherish them. We will cherish them. You guys have a fantastic weekend here in Central Virginia. Take care.